I don't want any of them. Adrian Moretti's voice cut across the silence like a blade. 3 women stood in that room. 3 perfect, beautiful, powerful women, each one handpicked to become his wife. The entire Moretti family held their breath. And then he walked past all of them, straight toward me. The matchmaker who was never supposed to be chosen. If you've ever loved someone, you weren't supposed to love someone who belonged to a world far beyond yours. Then this story is for you. Subscribe to our channel, follow this story all the way to the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Sofia Bellini did not believe in coincidences. She believed in preparation, in patience, in the quiet art of reading people before they had a chance to read themselves. 10 years of running a private matchmaking agency in Manhattan had taught her that. 10 years of sitting across from widows, divorced executives, lonely billionaires, and heartbroken professionals who all said the same thing when they first walked through her door. They said they were ready. They said they knew what they wanted. They were almost always wrong. Sofia had learned to be gentle about that. She never told a client they were broken. She never said the word lonely out loud. She simply listened. She asked quiet questions. She paid attention to the things people said when they thought they were talking about something else entirely. A man who described his ideal partner as someone patient was really saying he lost his temper too often and hated himself for it. A woman who wanted someone grounded was really saying she was terrified of being abandoned again. Sofia heard the real sentence underneath every careful answer. That was her gift. And on a Tuesday evening in late October, when the city had gone gray and the windows of her small office on West 43rd Street were beginning to fog from the cold outside, the door opened and Adrian Moretti walked in. She knew who he was before he spoke. Everybody in New York knew Adrian Moretti. He was 42 years old, tall in the way that made rooms feel smaller, and dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly office rent. His face was the kind of face that photographers chased and enemies studied carefully. Strong jaw, dark eyes that moved with deliberate precision, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to rest. He did not introduce himself. He walked to the chair across from her desk, sat down without asking permission, and placed a manila folder on the surface between them. "I was told you're discreet," he said. Sofia folded her hands. "I am. And effective. Usually." He looked at her for a moment, not rudely, but with the particular intensity of someone who had spent his entire life assessing threats and had not yet decided which category she belonged in. "My name is—" "I know who you are, Mr. Moretti." Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise. More like a recalibration. "Then I'll skip the introduction," he said. "My mother turns 70 in 60 days. She has asked me for one thing only after everything I've put her through." He paused. "She wants to see me with someone real before she gets any older." Sofia said nothing. "I have 3 candidates." He continued, nodding toward the folder. "Women I've identified. All of them are appropriate. All of them would be acceptable to my family and my world. I need someone to evaluate them. Spend time with them. Tell me which one is the right match." Sofia did not open the folder. "How long have you been in love with any of them?" she asked. The silence that followed was not comfortable. "That's not the point," he said. "It's exactly the point. Miss Bellini." "Sofia." She kept her voice level. "And with respect, Mr. Moretti, you did not come to me because you need someone to evaluate 3 women. Any assistant could arrange dinners and report back observations. You came to me because somewhere underneath that folder you already know none of them is the right choice. And that frightens you." Adrian Moretti stared at her. For exactly 4 seconds, nobody spoke. Then he said very quietly, "You're expensive." "Extremely," she agreed. "And you believe you can do what nobody else has managed." "I don't believe in miracles," she said. "I believe in honesty. And I think you've been surrounded by people who tell you what you want to hear for so long that you've forgotten what honesty sounds like." His jaw tightened, and Sofia thought for just a moment that he was going to stand up and leave. Instead, he said, "Fine. When do we start?" The folder contained 3 names: Victoria Hayes, 38 years old, a senior partner at one of Manhattan's most respected litigation firms. Ivy educated, sharply articulate, the daughter of a federal judge. She had built her entire career on the ability to walk into a room full of powerful men and make them feel like the weaker party. Isabella Romano, 40 years old, from a family whose name carried the kind of old money that didn't need to announce itself. She had studied art history in Florence, run charitable foundations in 3 countries, and moved through New York society with the particular grace of someone who had been trained from childhood to make other people feel comfortable. Her family and the Morettis had history. Good history. Clara Evans, 36 years old, a physician who had left a high-salary position at a private hospital to work in underserved neighborhoods in the Bronx. She drove her own car. She wore no designer labels. She had reportedly once told a prominent city councilman to sit down and stop interrupting during a community health board meeting. The councilman had sat down. Sophia read the files twice. Then she looked up at Adrian. These women are impressive. Yes, they're all accomplished, independent, and clearly capable of handling a complicated life. That was the requirement. Who made the requirement? A pause. What do you mean? Did you choose these qualities? Sophia asked carefully. Or did someone tell you these were the qualities that would make a suitable match for the Moretti name? Adrian's expression did not change, but his left hand moved slightly on the armrest. Sophia noticed. She always noticed. Both, he said finally, and that single honest word told her more about him than everything in the folder combined. She began with Victoria. They met at a restaurant in Midtown that Adrian selected. Neutral ground. Quiet enough for conversation. Expensive enough to signal respect without being ostentatious. Sophia arrived early and sat at the bar. She watched them enter separately. Victoria first in a dark blazer, no jewelry, except small gold earrings, hair pulled back with military precision. Adrian, second 30 seconds later, which Sophia suspected was deliberate. She watched them shake hands. She watched them sit. She ordered a sparkling water and observed from 40 feet away as one of New York's most feared men and one of the city's sharpest legal minds attempted to have dinner together. It was like watching 2 very capable chess players meet for the first time and immediately begin counting each other's pieces. Within 20 minutes, Victoria had challenged 3 of Adrian's statements. Within 30, he had pushed back on 2 of hers. By the time the main course arrived, they were arguing about property rights in ways that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with each other's fundamental worldview. It was fascinating. It was also completely, obviously wrong. Not because they didn't respect each other. They clearly did. Not because the conversation lacked energy. It had enormous energy. But Sophia had been doing this long enough to know the difference between the electricity of chemistry and the electricity of combat. And what she was watching across that restaurant was 2 people who would spend the rest of their lives fighting for the last word. Some couples needed that. Adrian Moretti did not. What he needed. Sophia was beginning to understand, watching him push his food around the plate, while Victoria demolished his argument about municipal development, was not someone who matched his strength. He needed someone who made him feel like his strength had somewhere to rest. After dinner, Sophia met with Victoria separately for coffee. What did you think? Sophia asked. Victoria was quiet for a moment. He's impressive, she said. Genuinely. He knows more than he pretends to. He listens when he thinks nobody's watching. A pause. But he's carrying something heavy. Something he's been carrying so long he doesn't even feel the weight anymore. She looked at Sophia. I respect him. I don't think I can reach him. It was the most honest thing Sophia had heard all week. Isabella Romano was a different experience entirely. Where Victoria had arrived at dinner like a prepared argument, Isabella arrived like a warm afternoon. She touched Adrian's arm when she greeted him. She laughed at the right moments. She steered conversations toward places where everyone at the table felt seen. Lucia Moretti, who had quietly arranged to be nearby that evening under the pretext of a family birthday, took one look at Isabella and called Sophia within the hour. This is the one, Lucia said without preamble. This is the woman my son needs. Sophia listened carefully. She is lovely, she agreed. She understands our world. She knows how to carry herself. The families have always respected each other. Yes. Adrian looked comfortable with her. I haven't seen him comfortable in years. Mrs. Moretti, Sophia said gently, comfortable and happy are not always the same thing. A long pause. You sound like his grandmother, Lucia said. She sounds like she was a wise woman. Another pause. Then softly, she was. It was after the Isabella dinner that something unexpected happened. Adrian called Sophia at 8:45 in the evening, not to report, not to schedule. He called the way a person calls when they've been driving around for an hour and need somewhere to put their thoughts. She's perfect, he said when Sophia answered. Isabella. Everything about her is right. The family approves. The history is there. She's kind. She's intelligent. She knows how to handle my world without being destroyed by it. A beat. My mother cried when she left. Happy tears. I haven't made my mother cry happy tears in 15 years. Sophia sat very still. And, she said. Silence. And what, he said. You called me at nearly 9 o'clock to tell me your mother cried happy tears, and Isabella Romano is perfect, Sophia said. Which means you're about to tell me why you're not certain. The silence this time was longer. I keep thinking, he said slowly, that I've spent my entire life arranging things. People, situations, outcomes. I arrange things so they work the way they're supposed to work. Another pause. And when I sat across from Isabella tonight, and everything was exactly right, the conversation, the family, the history, all of it perfectly in place, I thought to myself, this is exactly what I arranged. And I don't know if that's love or just another arrangement. Sophia felt something move in her chest. She kept her voice professional. That's a very important question, Mr. Moretti. Adrian. Adrian. She closed her eyes briefly. It means you're thinking more deeply about this than you were when you first walked into my office. Is that good? It's essential, she said. Real love cannot be arranged. It can be given room to grow, but it cannot be arranged. He was quiet for a while. Then, tell me about Clara. Clara Evans was the last candidate, and the most disruptive. She arrived at the arranged meeting in clean but ordinary clothes. No stylist had been consulted. No fashion strategy had been deployed. She wore flat shoes and carried a tote bag with a hospital logo on the side. And when Adrian stood to greet her, she looked at him with the calm, direct assessment of someone who had spent years evaluating patients and did not intend to stop now. Mr. Moretti, she said. Dr. Evans. You can call me Clara. I find titles between strangers create distance that isn't useful. Adrian, who had built entire empires on strategic distance, blinked. All right, he said. Clara. She sat down and picked up the menu without ceremony. I'll be honest with you, she said, not looking up. I agreed to this meeting because someone I trust said you were worth knowing. I am not here to audition. I'm not interested in anyone's approval. But I am genuinely curious about who you are when nobody's performing. Adrian put his own menu down. I'll be honest with you too, he said. Please. Nobody has said that to me in a professional setting in approximately 12 years. Clara looked up. And for the first time, something that might have been a smile crossed her face. Then we're already ahead of schedule. Sophia, watching from across the room, felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Because she realized something in that moment. She was not watching two people fall in love. She was watching Adrian Moretti meet someone who reminded him that he was allowed to be a human being, and the particular quiet devastation of that realization had nothing to do with Clara. It had to do with who had been doing that, reminding him quietly, conversation by conversation, phone call by phone call for the past 3 weeks. He came back to her office the next morning. He did this often now, too often for it to be entirely professional. He brought coffee, always exactly the right order, which she had never explicitly given him, and sat across from her desk and talked the way people talked when they had been alone with their thoughts for too long. Clara is remarkable, he said. She is. She told me I was wrong about something last night. about the hospital system and private funding and community trust. He paused. She wasn't angry about it. She wasn't trying to prove something. She just told me I was wrong the way someone tells you your coat is on backward. And were you wrong? Completely. He almost smiled. It was the most useful conversation I've had in months. Sophia looked at him across her desk. She had been doing this for 10 years. She knew every tell. She knew the difference between a man who admired a woman and a man who was moved by one. She knew the difference between attraction and recognition, that rarer, more dangerous thing that happened when someone saw the version of you that you had mostly given up on. She saw it in his face every time he came back to her office. And the terrible thing, the professionally catastrophic thing was that she knew what it felt like from her side too. "You should spend more time with Clara," Sophia said. Her voice was even, practiced. "The directness she offers you is genuinely rare." Sophia. She looked up. Adrian was watching her with that careful, precise attention that she had learned meant he was about to say something he had been thinking about for longer than he wanted to admit. "When was the last time someone told you that you were doing something remarkable?" he said. She stopped. "I'm your matchmaker," she said. "My job is to—" "I'm not asking about your job." His voice was quiet. "I'm asking about you." The room was very still. Sophia's heart was making decisions her mind had not authorized. "Adrian." "Never mind," he said. He stood up. He picked up his coat. At the door he turned back. "Clara is impressive. Victoria is formidable. Isabella is everything the family wants." A pause. "I'll let you know when I've decided." He left, and Sophia sat alone in her office for a long time, staring at the cold coffee he had brought her, knowing with the particular clarity of someone who read people for a living that she was already in trouble. That evening her phone rang. It was not Adrian. It was a woman whose voice she didn't recognize. "Miss Bellini," the woman said. "I think there's something you need to know about one of the candidates in the Moretti search." Sophia straightened. "Who is this?" "Someone who doesn't want to see Adrian Moretti make a mistake." A pause. "Someone who knows that one of those three women has been placed in his path deliberately, not by chance, not by compatibility, by someone who wants access to his family." Sophia's hand tightened on the phone. "I need more than that," she said. "I know, which is why I'm going to send you something." The call ended. 3 minutes later, her email received a file. Sophia opened it, and as she read through page after page of communication records, financial transfers, and meeting logs, a cold, specific dread settled in her chest. Someone had been using this process. Someone had seen Adrian's search for a wife not as a love story, but as a door. And the woman they had positioned, beautiful, appropriate, impossible to suspect, was already inside his mother's house. Sophia closed her laptop. She thought about Adrian's face when he talked about his mother. She thought about Lucia Moretti sitting at a dinner table crying happy tears. She thought about 60 days and a family expecting an announcement and a man who had finally slowly quietly begun to let his guard down. And she picked up her phone and dialed his number. It rang 3 times. When he answered, she didn't wait. "Adrian," she said, "don't make any decisions yet. I need to see you, tonight. Something is wrong." The silence on his end lasted exactly 2 seconds. "I'm on my way," he said. Adrian arrived in 11 minutes. Sophia knew because she had been watching the clock on her wall the way people watch clocks when they are trying not to think about the thing they are actually thinking about. When he walked through her office door, he was not wearing a jacket. That was unusual. In 3 weeks of knowing him, she had never once seen Adrian Moretti arrive anywhere underprepared. Tonight his shirt was open at the collar, and his expression had the tight, controlled quality of a man who had heard the word wrong and immediately started running through every room in his memory to find where he had left the door unlocked. "Tell me," he said. No greeting, no preliminaries. Sophia turned her laptop around on the desk and let him read. She watched his face as he went through the documents. She had learned in 3 weeks how to read him. Most people would have seen nothing. His expression stayed composed. His posture didn't shift. But his eyes moved differently when the information was hitting something real slower, more deliberate. Going back to reread a sentence he'd already absorbed because some part of his mind refused to accept it on first contact. He read for 4 minutes without speaking. Then he said very quietly, "How long have you had this?" 40 minutes, Sophia said. Someone called me. A woman. She wouldn't give her name. What did she sound like? Calm. Like someone who had made a difficult decision and was no longer afraid of it. Adrian stood up straight. He closed the laptop. He did not look at her for a moment, and she gave him the few seconds of not being watched that a man needed when information was rearranging itself inside him into something he hadn't wanted to know. Which one, he said, not a question, a statement. He was already thinking, already narrowing. The documents don't name her directly, Sophia said carefully. But the financial trail connects to a man named Caruso, Dino Caruso. Adrian went completely still. And that stillness, that absolute breathless stillness, told Sophia everything she needed to know about the history that name carried. Caruso, he repeated. You know him. I know what he wants. Adrian turned away, took 2 steps toward the window, then stopped because whatever was outside that window was not what he was seeing. What he was seeing was something from before, something older and much more dangerous than a matchmaking file. He's been trying to get inside the family for 6 years, not for money. He doesn't need money. He needs proximity. He needs someone in the room when decisions are made. A pause. He's been patient. Patient enough to wait for your mother's birthday, Sophia said. Adrian turned back around. Yes. And patient enough to find a woman who would pass every test, Sophia continued. Someone legitimate, someone actually appropriate, someone who might not even know exactly what she was placed there to do. That landed. She watched it land. You think she's innocent, he said. I think she may have been used, Sophia said. There's a difference. And it matters. Because if she was a willing participant, that is one conversation. But if someone she trusted put her in your path with an agenda, she wasn't fully aware of that, is a different kind of cruelty entirely. To her, and to you. Adrian sat back down. He pressed his hands flat on the desk between them, the way a man braces himself against a surface when the room is moving and he needs something that isn't moving. Which one, Sophia? She met his eyes. I don't know yet, she said. And I'm not going to tell you until I'm certain. Because if I'm wrong, if I point at the wrong woman, you will never be able to look at her the same way. And she will not deserve that. Something crossed his face. Something she recognized because she had seen it twice before in 3 weeks. It was the expression he wore when someone said something to him that he had not expected, and that he did not know how to immediately categorize as threat or gift. You're protecting her, he said. I'm protecting the truth, Sophia said. Which protects everyone, including you. He looked at her for a long moment. All right, he said. What do you need? Time, she said. And your patience. I have 51 days. Then I need 48 hours. She did not sleep that night. She went back through every conversation, every observation, every note she had made in 3 weeks of watching Adrian Moretti sit across from 3 remarkable women. She pulled out the behavioral logs she kept on every client. Not formal documents, just her own handwritten observations. A habit from the early years of the agency when her grandmother had told her that memory was unreliable, but a pencil never lied. She read through them twice. Then she called a contact she had not spoken to in 2 years. A woman named Diane, who worked in financial intelligence and owed Sophia a quiet favor from a previous case that neither of them ever discussed by name. I need a connection traced, Sophia said when Diane answered. Between a man named Dino Caruso and anyone in the social circle of the Moretti candidates. I can send you the documents. How fast? Diane asked. Yesterday would be ideal. You'll have it by morning. A pause. Sophia. Yes. Be careful with this one. Caruso doesn't play games for stakes he considers small. After she hung up, Sophia sat in her quiet office and thought about that for a while. Then she thought about Adrian's face when he had said the name Caruso. That kind of stillness was not about business. That was the stillness of a man who had already calculated the worst possible version of this and was doing the arithmetic on what it would cost the people he loved. She thought about Lucia crying happy tears, and she started making calls. By 6 in the morning, she had 3 new pieces of information. By 7, she had confirmed 2 of them independently. By 7:45, when her office phone rang, and Adrian's voice came through before she had finished her second coffee, she already knew. "I need to see you," she said before he could speak. A pause. "I'm already downstairs." She buzzed him in. He looked like a man who had also not slept, though on him it manifested differently. Sharper, more focused, the kind of sleeplessness that stripped everything unnecessary away and left only the essential machinery running. He sat. She did not waste time. "It's not Clara," she said, "and it's not Victoria." Adrian did not react visibly, but she saw his jaw shift. "Isabella," he said. "The family connection is real," Sophia said. "Her history with your world is genuine. She is not a villain in this story, Adrian. She is a woman who was introduced to you through a channel that was quietly funded by Caruso. She may know the man socially. She almost certainly does not know that he used that social connection to ensure she was considered as a candidate." "Almost certainly," he repeated. "I cannot give you absolute certainty about what is inside another person's mind," Sophia said. "What I can give you is this based on everything I have observed about Isabella Romano. In 3 weeks, she is a good woman who has been positioned without her full knowledge in a situation designed to benefit someone else. She has no visible motive. She has no financial relationship with Caruso that Diane could find. What she has is a mutual social acquaintance who suggested your name to her and presented this as an organic introduction." Adrian was quiet. "She's been used," he said finally. "Yes. And she doesn't know it." "I don't believe she does." He stood up, walked 2 steps, turned back. "What does Caruso actually want? If he gets someone inside, what is the goal?" "Access to your port agreements," Sophia said. "The Moretti name controls 3 major shipping routes out of the Northeast. Caruso needs those routes for something he's moving that cannot go through normal channels. If he has someone in your household, someone at the breakfast table, at the family meetings, in the conversations that don't happen in conference rooms, he eventually gets what he needs." Adrian's expression went somewhere cold and very controlled. "How was going to use my mother's birthday against me," he said. "He was going to use your love for your mother," Sophia said quietly. "There's a difference, and it's worse." The silence after that was long. Adrian sat back down. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. Not angrier. Something more contained than anger and more dangerous for being contained. "Does Isabella need to be told?" he said. Sophia had been thinking about this since 4 in the morning. "Yes," she said, "but not by you, and not as an accusation. She is a victim in this. If she finds out she was used, and she deserves to find out, she should hear it in a way that gives her the chance to respond as herself, not as someone suddenly being interrogated." "You'll tell her," Adrian said. "I'll talk to her," Sophia corrected. "There's a difference." Something in his expression shifted again, that same unclassifiable look, the one she had stopped trying to name, because naming it would require her to acknowledge what she saw in it. "You keep making those distinctions," he said. "Which ones?" "Between things that sound the same but aren't." He looked at her steadily. "Tell me you eat properly. You've had nothing since I came in." Sophia blinked at the sudden change of direction. "I had coffee." "That's not food. Adrian, we are in the middle of a crisis involving organized crime and your mother's birthday. And you haven't eaten," he said. He stood up. He went to the small side table where her assistant always left a basket of things in the morning, and found as Sophia's assistant reliably provided a container of overnight oats and a wrapped piece of sourdough. He put them both on her desk without comment. Sophia stared at them. Then she looked up at him. "You fixed my heater last week," she said. "It was making a noise that would have driven anyone insane. You ordered the part yourself." It was a simple repair. Adrian. He met her eyes. "You're my client," she said, very carefully. "I know what I am," he said. And the way he said it, quiet, certain, without pressure, made it worse than if he had said something bold, because bold she could have deflected and certainty without pressure she had no defense against whatsoever. She ate the sourdough. He sat across from her, and they talked through the logistics of what would need to happen next. She would meet with Isabella that afternoon. Adrian would say nothing to his family until she had spoken to Isabella and confirmed the picture. They would not cancel anything. They would not change the external shape of the process. Whoever was watching, and someone was almost certainly watching, would see nothing different. It was a good plan. It was a professional plan, and Sophia executed it professionally, which meant that she did not think about the quiet way Adrian watched her eat her breakfast, or the fact that he had remembered the exact way she took her coffee without ever being told, or the particular warmth that settled in her chest when he said "we" about the logistics, as though the two of them had naturally somewhere in the past 3 weeks become a unit. She did not think about any of that. She was extremely professional about not thinking about it. Isabella Romano met her at a wine bar on the Upper East Side at 2 in the afternoon. She arrived first. She always arrived first. Sophia had noticed a habit of someone who had been raised to never make others wait, and stood up when Sophia came in, which was also characteristic, and offered a genuine smile, which made what Sophia was about to do considerably harder. They ordered. They talked about small things for a few minutes. And then Sophia set down her glass and said simply, "I need to tell you something that I should not have to be telling you. And I want you to know before I say it that nothing I'm about to say reflects on your character or your integrity." Isabella's smile changed, not disappeared. Changed became something more careful, more attentive. "All right," she said. Sophia told her. "Not everything, not the shipping routes or the specific intelligence, but enough. The name Caruso. The channel through which Isabella's introduction to Adrian had been arranged. The financial trail that connected the introduction to a man with an agenda that had nothing to do with Isabella's happiness or Adrian's." She watched Isabella's face as she listened. She had been watching faces for 10 years. What she saw in Isabella Romano's face during those 4 minutes was not guilt. It was not calculation. It was the particular sickening humiliation of a woman who understood that she had been moved like a piece on a board by someone who had used her good faith as a tool. When Sophia finished, Isabella was quiet for almost 30 seconds. Then she said, "He introduced us at the Veracruz Foundation Gala in March." "I know," Sophia said gently. "He said Adrian was a man worth knowing, that the families had history, and that a connection between us would be natural." A pause. "He made it sound like he was doing me a kindness." "He did it very carefully," Sophia said. "That's supposed to make me feel better." "No," Sophia said. "Nothing I can say is going to make this feel better immediately. What I can tell you is that you did nothing wrong. You were introduced to a man through a social contact. You agreed to meet. Everything after that was real: your conversations, your manner, the genuine warmth you showed his mother. None of that was staged." Isabella looked at her. Her eyes were bright. Not crying, she was not the crying type, Sophia had already assessed that, but the brightness was there, the specific controlled brightness of someone pressing hard against an emotion they have decided not to display in public. "Does Adrian know?" Isabella asked. "Yes." "What does he think of me?" "He thinks you were used," Sophia said. "He is angry at the person who used you. He is not angry at you." Isabella absorbed this. "He's a better man than his reputation," she said finally. "I know," Sophia said. "You know him fairly well by now." It was not an accusation. It was an observation. Isabella Romano was very intelligent and very perceptive, and she was sitting across from a woman who had just protected her genuinely, without strategic motive, and she was doing the arithmetic with those pieces the same way any perceptive person would. "He's my client," Sophia said. Isabella looked at her for a moment. "Of course," she said, and her smile when it came was knowing and not unkind. "Of course he is." That evening, Adrian called. "She took it with extraordinary grace," Sophia said. I expected she would. A pause. How are you? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Outside her window, the city was doing what it always did. Loud, indifferent, relentlessly itself. And she thought about how much she had stopped noticing the city since 3 weeks ago, when her world had narrowed to one client and his complicated life. It was a difficult conversation, she said. She's a good woman. Yes. She deserved better than being used. Everyone deserves better than being used. A pause. Sophia. Yes. Thank you for handling it the way you did, for protecting her dignity the way you would have wanted your own protected. She closed her eyes. The problem with Adrian Moretti, she thought, was not that he was powerful or dangerous or complicated. The problem was that he noticed things. Small, specific, real things that no one who had known her for 3 weeks should be able to articulate about her. The things she valued, the distinctions she made, the shape of her care. He saw them all, and he said so, without agenda, without strategy. Just clearly the way someone spoke when they had been looking carefully and wanted you to know they had not looked away. You should sleep, she said. Probably. A pause. Victoria called me today. Sophia straightened slightly. What did she say? She said she'd heard something was happening with the process. Someone had talked. He was quiet for a moment. She said she wanted me to know that regardless of how this ended, she thought I was someone who deserved an honest life, not just a powerful one. That sounds like Victoria, Sophia said. It does. Another pause. She also said, and this is the part I've been sitting with all evening, she said, the person in my life most capable of giving me an honest life was already sitting across a desk from me every morning. The silence that followed was complete. Sophia's heart was not behaving professionally at all. Victoria is perceptive, she said. Her voice was steady. She was proud of how steady it was. She is, Adrian agreed. Sophia, don't, she said, quietly. Not as a rebuke, as something closer to self-preservation. Please, not tonight. We still have work to do. A long pause. All right, he said. Not tonight. And the way he said it, patient, unhurried, certain, left. Exactly. No ambiguity about the fact that he intended there to be another night where the conversation would not stop there. Sophia set down her phone. She sat in her quiet office for a very long time. And then she did something she had not allowed herself to do in 3 weeks of careful, professional, scrupulously controlled interaction with Adrian Moretti. She stopped arguing with herself. She sat with the truth of what she felt quietly in the dark in the office that smelled faintly of the coffee he always brought her next to the heater he had fixed himself because she was cold. She sat with it, and she was terrified. Not because it was wrong, but because it was real. And real in her experience was always the thing that could hurt you in ways that careful arrangements never could. She thought about Caruso, about 51 days, about Lucia Moretti, who wanted her son to be seen by someone real before she got any older. She thought about Adrian asking her in this very office when the last time was that someone had told her she was doing something remarkable. She thought about the folder he had placed on her desk 3 weeks ago. 3 names, 3 possible brides, and her own name, which appeared nowhere in that folder, which appeared nowhere in any of his arrangements, because she was the matchmaker. She was the woman who helped other people find love. She was not supposed to be the answer. She was not supposed to be the one. But the heart, as her grandmother had told her once in this very office, was not a client who followed the rules you set for it. The heart made its own arrangements, and it did not ask permission first. Sophia gave herself exactly 1 night to feel everything she was not supposed to feel. 1 night to sit in the quiet of her office with the truth she had been carefully avoiding for 3 weeks, to look at it directly, instead of walking around it the way she walked around the broken tile near her building entrance, aware, deliberate, consistent. 1 night. Then she woke up the next morning, made coffee, and reminded herself of the 3 things she knew with absolute professional certainty. Adrian Moretti was her client. The process was not finished. And the worst possible thing she could do for him, for his family, for the integrity of the work she had spent 10 years building, was to let what she felt inside her chest interfere with what she owed him as a professional. She was still reminding herself of those three things when he walked through her door at 8:15, carrying 2 coffees and a paper bag that smelled like the bakery 2 blocks away that she had mentioned once in passing 3 weeks ago as the place that made the only almond croissant in Manhattan worth the calories. He remembered. He always remembered. "We need to talk about Caruso," she said before he could set the bag down. "Professional. Immediate. Safe." Adrian put her coffee on the desk without comment. Sat. "I know. He's going to find out that the Isabella channel has been identified. Maybe not immediately. But when Isabella pulls back from the process, and she will, because she's too proud to continue knowing she was used, someone connected to Caruso will notice the shift." "I know," he said again. "Which means we have a narrow window before he adjusts his approach and tries something else." "Sophia, the birthday is in 38 days. If he decides to escalate..." "Sophia." His voice was quiet, but it stopped her. "I hear you, and you're right about all of it. But I need you to look at me for a moment before we talk strategy." She looked at him. "How are you actually doing?" he said. The question was so simple, so direct, so entirely not what a client was supposed to ask his matchmaker at 8 in the morning during a crisis involving organized crime. She had 3 professional deflections ready. She chose none of them. "I'm managing," she said. "That's not the same as fine." "No," she agreed. "It isn't." He nodded, as though that was enough, as though he was not going to push further because he respected the line she was holding, even if both of them could see it was a very thin line. That restraint, that specific careful restraint, was more dangerous to her composure than any boldness could have been. "Caruso," she said. "Caruso," he agreed. They spent 2 hours working through it. Not romantically, not dangerously, just 2 people at a desk with coffee and a paper bag between them, thinking through a problem that had real stakes and required real precision. What they knew, Dino Caruso had engineered Isabella's introduction. He had been patient and subtle, and had chosen a woman who was genuinely appropriate, so the planted candidate would survive scrutiny. He had access to someone inside the Moretti social circle who had facilitated the introduction at the gala. He needed proximity to the family's shipping agreements. He had been waiting 6 years for an opening this clean. What they didn't know whether he had a secondary plan. Whether there was someone else in play that they hadn't identified. Whether he knew yet that the Isabella channel had been compromised. "He'll have a contingency," Adrian said. He was not guessing. He said it the way someone stated a fact about weather. This is how it works. This is what happens. He's too careful to have only one door. "Who else has access to your process?" Sophia asked. "Who knows about the search beyond the family?" "My attorney, my chief of staff, 2 people on my personal security team." A pause. "And anyone those people may have spoken to." "Which of them has any connection to Caruso?" "None that I know of." He was quiet for a moment. "Which means either Caruso has been more patient than I thought, or there's a connection I haven't found yet." "Or," Sophia said slowly, "he doesn't have a direct connection to your people. He has a connection to me." The silence that followed that sentence was sudden and complete. Adrian looked at her. "Explain." "I'm not inside your organization," Sophia said, working through it as she spoke. "But I am inside your process. I arranged the meetings. I selected the venues. I have the schedule. I have communication with all 3 candidates." She met his eyes. "If someone wanted a window into this search from the outside, I am a much softer target than anyone on your staff." Adrian's expression did something complicated. "You think someone has been watching your office?" "I think it's possible. Or your communications." "Also possible." He was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Then he stood up, walked to the window, and said, not angrily, not dramatically, but with the flat certainty of someone making a correction, "That stops today." "Adrian, I'm not asking permission." He turned back. "Not about this. I will put my own people on your building. Your communications will go through a secure channel starting tonight." And until this is resolved, you do not meet anyone connected to this process without someone I trust nearby. Sophia opened her mouth. This is not control, he said before she could speak. This is the one area where I know more than you do, and I am asking you to let me use that knowledge to keep you safe. She closed her mouth. He was right. That was the most annoying part. He was entirely specifically right, and he had framed it correctly, not as a command, not as possession, but as competence offered in the area where his exceeded hers. Hers one person, she said. Discreet. Nobody who looks like security. Done. And I keep running my own meetings. Nobody follows me inside. Agreed. And you tell me everything Caruso does from this point forward. No filtering. No protecting me from information. He looked at her steadily. I wouldn't filter information from you. Some men think protection and information withholding are the same thing. Some men are wrong about a great many things, he said. And the way he said it direct without apology as a simple statement of fact made her press her lips together and look back at her notes, because looking at him was not currently helping her maintain the 3 professional certainties she had woken up with. That afternoon, Sophia called Victoria. Not because she had to. The process no longer required it. Victoria had already assessed herself out of contention with the kind of clear-eyed self-awareness that was entirely characteristic of her. But Sophia called because Victoria had said something to Adrian that had been sitting in Sophia's mind since the previous evening, and Sophia was not constitutionally capable of leaving something unexamined when it mattered. He told you what I said? Victoria said immediately. No preamble. He did. And I wanted to ask you directly why you said it. A brief pause. Because it was true. I said it because it was true, and because I thought he needed to hear it from someone who had no stake in the outcome. Another pause. Also because I'm a lawyer, and I find willful blindness professionally offensive. Whose willful blindness? Sophia asked. His or mine? Both, Victoria said pleasantly. You're both being ridiculous if I'm being honest. He looks at you like you're the only fixed point in a room that keeps moving. And you look at him like you're doing calculus every 5 seconds to calculate the exact distance you're legally required to maintain. Sophia was quiet. I'm his matchmaker, she said. Sophia. Victoria's voice was not unkind. You matched him. You just haven't admitted yet who you matched him with. The call ended shortly after. Sophia sat for a while. Then she called Clara. Clara answered on the second ring, which was characteristic. She was someone who did not let things wait when they could be addressed. I heard something happened with the process, Clara said. Adrian called me this morning. I was careful about what he said, but Adrian Moretti being careful about what he says is itself a form of information. There was a complication, Sophia said. Is everyone all right? That question, immediate, genuine, oriented toward other people, rather than toward Clara's own position in the situation, told Sophia everything she needed to confirm about this woman's character. Everyone is fine, Sophia said. Clara, I want to ask you something, and I want you to know there is no professional context for this question. I'm asking as one person to another. All right. When you met Adrian, in that restaurant, what did you actually see? Clara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had the measured thoughtfulness of someone who took questions seriously. I saw a man who had been keeping himself at the edge of his own life for so long that he'd forgotten he was allowed to be in the center of it, she said. I see that in patients sometimes. People who manage everything around them beautifully and neglect the one thing at the core. A pause. He's not a bad man. He's a man who made protection his entire identity because loving people and losing them was too costly. So he stopped letting people close enough to cost him anything. Yes, Sophia said quietly. You know him well, Clara said. I've been observing him professionally for, Sophia. Clara's voice was gentle but precise. I'm a doctor. I observe people for a living too. What you just described when I said those things about him. The quality of your silence. The particular kind of yes you said that is not professional observation. Sophia pressed her hand flat against her desk. No, she said after a moment. It isn't. Does he know? He knows something, Sophia said. I keep stopping him before he says it out loud. Why? Because once it's said out loud, the whole professional structure of what I've built here collapses. Clara was quiet for a beat. And if you let the professional structure collapse, what's left? Something real, Sophia said. Something I haven't had in a very long time. That sounds terrifying, Clara said. It is. It also sounds, Clara said carefully, like exactly what he needs, and what you need, which is either a remarkable coincidence or an argument that the universe has a better sense of humor than either of you. Sophia almost laughed. Almost. The call she did not expect came at 6:47 that evening. Not from Adrian. Not from Victoria, or Clara, or Diane with new intelligence. From Lucia Moretti. Sophia stared at the name on her phone screen for 2 full rings before she answered. Mrs. Moretti. Sophia. Lucia's voice was warm but direct. She had not raised a man like Adrian by being otherwise. I think it is past time that you and I spoke honestly with each other. Of course, Sophia said carefully. I am 70 years old in 38 days, Lucia said. I have spent the last 7 years watching my son be very impressive and very alone. I have made peace with many things in my life. That is not one of them. I understand. Do you? Lucia said. Because I want to be very clear. I did not ask Adrian to find a wife so that I could check a box before my birthday. I asked him to find someone real, because he has been disappearing slowly for years, and I can see it happening, and I cannot stop it from where I stand. A pause. A mother can see certain things that the person standing closer cannot. Sophia said nothing. He comes home differently since he began working with you, Lucia continued. Not just calmer, present. He is present in conversations again. He asks questions. He argues back. He laughs at the table. Her voice softened. Whatever you are doing, or whatever has happened between working together, I am not asking you to explain it to me. I am simply telling you what I observe. Mrs. Moretti. Lucia. Lucia. Sophia stopped. Tried again. Your son hired me to find him a match. That is the professional relationship. Whatever else you may be observing. He fixed your heater, Lucia said. Sophia stopped speaking entirely. He told me about the office heater, Lucia said. Simply, precisely, like a woman who knew exactly which door she was opening and had decided to open it anyway. He told me it was making a terrible noise and that the cold was affecting your work. He ordered the part and drove over on a Wednesday evening. He came home looking lighter than I had seen him look in years. A pause. My son does not fix other people's heaters, Sophia. The quiet stretched between them. No, Sophia said finally. I don't suppose he does. I have one request, Lucia said. Not a demand. A request from a woman who loves her son and is running out of birthdays. A pause. Do not let the professional structure be the reason. Do not choose the role over the reality. Whatever it cost you professionally, personally, do not choose the role. Sophia's eyes were burning. She was not going to cry. She was absolutely not going to cry on the phone with her client's mother. You raised a remarkable man, she said. Her voice held. He had help, Lucia said. From people who were not afraid to tell him the truth. A beat. I believe you are one of those people. I believe you have been one of those people since the first evening when you told him he didn't need a wife, he needed someone who could see him. He told you that. He tells me many things, not everything, but many things. A small silence. Good night, Sophia. Think about what I said. The call ended. Sophia set her phone down on the desk. She sat very still. And then the door of her office opened because she had forgotten to lock it after Diane's courier had come by an hour ago and Adrian walked in. He stopped when he saw her face. What happened? He said immediately. Your mother called me. Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, understanding. The resigned, fond understanding of a man who knew exactly what his mother was and had long since stopped being surprised by her. What did she say? He said. She told me you fixed my heater. Adrian was quiet. She told me you've been coming home differently, Sophia continued. Present, laughing. She looked at him. She told me not to let the professional structure be the reason. He crossed to her desk. Did not sit. Stood at the edge of it close enough that she would have to stand to be at the same level, and she stayed seated, and somehow that slight difference in elevation was the only thing that felt like a boundary right now. I've been trying to be patient, he said. I know. I've been trying to give you the time and the space you keep asking for without words. I know, she said again. Sophia. He waited until she looked up at him. I'm going to say the thing you've been stopping me from saying. Not to pressure you. Not because anything needs to happen right now, but because I think you deserve to hear it plainly and not in implications. She looked up. I came to you because I thought I needed a matchmaker, he said. What I found was a person. The first person in years who talked to me like I was a man and not a position. Who got angry on behalf of a woman she didn't know when she found out that woman had been used. Who ate the sourdough I brought her even when we were in the middle of a crisis, because she was too stubborn to admit she was hungry. He paused. Who fixed what was broken in me by simply treating me like it wasn't unfixable. Sophia's throat was tight. You are not my matchmaker, he said. Not anymore. You are the person I come to this office to see. You are the reason the 3 names in that folder were never enough. Not because they weren't remarkable women they are, but because I kept measuring them against conversations I'd already had with you, and nothing measured the same way. The silence after that was enormous. Adrian. I know, he said. The process isn't finished. There are 38 days. Caruso, my mother's birthday. All of it is still there. I'm not asking you to abandon any of it. A pause. I'm asking you to stop pretending you don't know what I'm telling you. Sophia stood up. They were the same height now. She looked at him directly, and she said the thing she had been arguing herself out of for 3 weeks. I know what you're telling me. And, he said. And I'm afraid, she said. Not of you, of this. Of what happens if we let this be real and it doesn't survive everything that comes next. Your world is complicated. Your enemies are specific. The people around you get used as tools by men like Caruso, and I am already closer to the center of this than any matchmaker should be, and... I know, he said. All of that is real. Then you understand why I'm hesitating. I understand, he said. I also understand that you were the one who told me the first night I sat in this office that what I needed was someone who could see me when nobody else was watching. He met her eyes. You see me, Sophia. You have seen me from the first evening, and I think I know that I see you in return. She was quiet. I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight, he said. I'm asking you to stop stopping me. Stop stopping this from being what it is. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. Then she said very quietly, when this is over, when the birthday has passed, and Caruso has been handled, and the 3 women are no longer candidates, and I am no longer your matchmaker, then we talk about what this is. It was not a yes. It was not a no. It was a when. And the difference between when and if was not small. Adrian heard it. She saw him hear it, the very slight, very controlled change in his expression. The exhale that was almost not visible. When, he agreed. And then his phone rang. He looked at it. His expression changed, completely, sharpened, hardened, went somewhere cold and specific that she had not seen since the night she said Caruso's name for the first time. What is it? She said. He showed her the screen. The text was from his chief of staff. 4 words. Caruso knows. Move tonight. Sophia's stomach dropped. What does that mean? She said. Move what? It means. Adrian said, already moving toward the door, already becoming the other version of himself. The dangerous, precise, controlled version that we are out of time, and that someone closer than we thought has been talking. Adrian. Stay in this office, he said. Lock the door. My man is outside, and he will not leave your door under any circumstances. I need 2 hours. You cannot just... Sophia. He turned at the door. His voice was urgent, but his eyes were steady, which was somehow the scariest combination. 2 hours. Then I come back and I explain everything. But right now I need to know you are safe so I can think clearly. Can you give me that? She wanted to argue. Every professional instinct she had wanted to argue, to demand information, to insert herself into the strategy the way she had been inserting herself for 3 weeks. But she looked at his face, and she understood that right now, in this specific moment, the most useful thing she could do for both of them was to be the fixed point he needed while the room moved. 2 hours, she said. He nodded, and he was gone. Sophia locked the door. She stood in the middle of her quiet office, in the place where 10 years of her professional life lived in file cabinets and handwritten notebooks and the memory of her grandmother's voice, and she thought about Caruso moving. She thought about what someone closer than we thought has been talking meant for the people she had come to know in the past 38 days. She thought about Lucia Moretti, who had 38 days left before a birthday she had waited for years to celebrate with her whole family intact. And she thought about Adrian's voice saying when, not if, when. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. 3 words. Stop protecting him. Sophia stared at the message. Then she took a screenshot, sent it to Adrian, and sent it to Diane. And then she sat down at her desk and thought very carefully about who in the entire architecture of this situation would benefit from her stepping away. Who needed the matchmaker gone? Who needed the person who saw Adrian? Clearly, the one person outside his world who had full access to the process to stop seeing. She thought about it for a long time. And when the answer came, it arrived with the cold, sickening clarity of something that had been obvious for days if she had been willing to look directly at it. The anonymous caller who had warned her about Caruso. The documents delivered too cleanly, too completely, at exactly the right moment to redirect attention. The information that had been just specific enough to be credible, and just incomplete enough to control what she saw. She had been managed. Not by Caruso. By someone who wanted her to find Caruso's hand in the process and stop looking for anyone else's. Someone who needed her focused on one threat so she would not see the other. She picked up her phone. She did not call Adrian. He was already moving on the Caruso information, and she could not pull him back without more than a theory. She called Diane instead. The documents you traced, she said when Diane answered. The financial trail. How clean was it? A pause. Clean enough to follow. Why? How clean is too clean, Sophia said. In your experience, when someone plants a trail, when someone wants you to find a specific connection, how obvious do they leave it? A longer pause. Obvious enough to find, Diane said slowly. But not so obvious it looks planted. You're thinking. I'm thinking. Sophia said that we were shown exactly what someone wanted us to see, and that we followed it exactly where someone wanted us to go. She pressed her hand to her desk. Diane, who benefits most from Adrian believing Caruso is the primary threat right now. Silence. Then Diane said very carefully, someone who isn't Caruso. Someone, Sophia said, who has been inside this process from a different angle entirely. Someone we haven't looked at yet because Caruso was so visible. The silence stretched. Then Diane said, Sophia, what did the unknown text say? Stop protecting him. That's not a warning, Diane said. That's a test. Someone wanted to see if you would run. Sophia stood up slowly. Or someone wanted to see, she said, if Adrian would come back for me. Another silence. Longer. Call me when you know more, Diane said. And Sophia, be careful, not just professionally. The call ended. Sophia stood alone in her locked office. The city moved outside without her. Somewhere in that city, Adrian Moretti was moving toward a threat that might not be the real one. And the real one, whatever it was, whoever it was watching to see what Sophia Bellini would do next. She sat back down. She opened her notebook. And she started from the beginning. Sophia had been wrong before. Not often. Not about the things that mattered most. But wrong enough across 10 years of this work to know what it felt like, that specific cold, unwinding in the stomach, when the picture you had been building with careful, patient attention suddenly revealed itself to be a picture of the wrong room entirely. She had been looking at Caruso. She had been so professionally focused on Caruso, on the financial trail on the Isabella Channel, on the shipping routes, and the manufactured introduction at the Veracruz Gala, that she had done the one thing she always warned her clients against. She had seen what she was shown and called it what she found. She opened her notebook to the first page. Not her notes from the Moretti case. Her actual first page, the one her grandmother had written in the early days of the agency, before Sophia had taken it over, before the Manhattan office, before the decade of widows and executives and lonely billionaires. Her grandmother's handwriting small and precise, and still legible after 15 years. It said, "The loudest threat is rarely the only one." Sophia read it twice. Then she turned to a clean page and started writing. Not the Caruso timeline. Not the financial documents Diane had traced. She started earlier. She went back to the very first day. Adrian walking through the door. The folder on the desk. 3 names. She wrote down every person who had known about the search before it became visible. Every person who had access to the process in any form. Every person whose behavior in retrospect contained something she had filed away and not returned to because Caruso had arrived and occupied the entire frame. She wrote for 40 minutes. When she stopped, she looked at the page. And one name sat differently than the others. Not because it was obvious. Because it wasn't. Because it was a name she had interacted with comfortably professionally without alarm. And that comfortable professionalism now felt like exactly the kind of surface a careful person would cultivate if they needed to be overlooked. She picked up her phone. Not Diane this time. Not Adrian, who was somewhere in the city moving toward a threat she was no longer certain was the primary one. She called someone she had not spoken to in 4 years. A man named Paul Reeves, who had worked in private investigation before a knee injury had shifted him into consulting, and who had a particular gift for finding the things that weren't in the documents because they had been deliberately kept out of them. "I need you to look at someone for me," she said when he answered. "Not financial, behavioral. I need to know who this person has been spending time with for the last 8 months, and I need it without leaving a footprint." Paul was quiet for a moment. "This connected to the Moretti situation." Sophia paused. "How do you know about that?" "Because 2 people have called me in the last 6 weeks asking very careful questions about Adrian Moretti's personal habits," Paul said. "Questions that were framed as business intelligence, but were actually social mapping. Who he trusts, who he listens to, who he would be most affected by losing." A pause. "I turned both of them down, but I remember who asked." Sophia sat very still. "Who?" Paul told her. She wrote the name down, looked at it, felt the unwinding happen again, deeper this time, because this name was not someone on the periphery. This name was not a Caruso associate or a social contact or a shadowy financial intermediary. This was someone Adrian trusted, someone inside his actual life. "Paul," she said, "I need everything you have, tonight." "I'll send it in an hour," he said. "Sophia, be careful who you call after you read it." The documents arrived in 53 minutes. Sophia read them the way she had read the Caruso file, carefully, completely going back to reread the sentences her mind resisted because resistance was information. What she found was not a simple picture. It was a layered one. Caruso was real. The financial connection to Isabella's introduction was real. The shipping route motivation was real. None of that had been fabricated, but it had been surfaced, given to her through the anonymous caller, through the documents arriving cleanly and completely by someone who needed her to find Caruso's hand in order to stop her from looking for another hand entirely. Adrian's chief of staff, a man named Robert Hale, who had worked for the Moretti organization for 11 years, who had Adrian's complete professional trust, who managed his schedule, filtered his communications, and sat in the room for every significant business decision. Robert Hale, who had been meeting privately monthly for 8 months with a man named Graham Forsyth. Graham Forsyth, who was not connected to Caruso. Graham Forsyth, who was connected to a competing organization that had been trying to dismantle the Moretti shipping agreements, not through Access Caruso's approach, but through replacement. Through positioning an alternative that would make the Moretti roots obsolete. They didn't need someone inside the family. They needed the family destabilized, distracted, occupied with an internal threat while the external repositioning happened quietly. And what better distraction than a manufactured crisis inside the most personal, most emotionally significant process Adrian Moretti had undertaken in years? Sophia set down the documents. She thought about the text she had received. Stop protecting him. It wasn't a warning to make her run. It was designed to make Adrian come back for her, to pull him away from wherever he was going, whatever. Caruso Intelligence, his chief of staff, had fed him tonight, and bring him back to her office reactive emotional off his usual axis. She looked at the time. 1 hour and 70 minutes since Adrian had left. She picked up her phone and called him. It went to voicemail. She called the number he had given her for emergencies, a secondary line that his actual security team monitored. A man answered on the first ring. Miss Bellini. Where is he? She said. He's in a meeting. He asked not to be disturbed. Tell him, Sophia said precisely, that the Caruso Intelligence is a redirect. Tell him the real threat is Robert Hale and a man named Graham Forsyth. Tell him not to take any action based on what Hale has told him tonight until he speaks to me. She paused. Can you give him that message word for word? A silence. Yes. Right now. Yes, Miss Bellini. She hung up. She stood up, sat down, stood up again. The thing about knowing something urgent and being unable to immediately act on it was that the body did not accept stillness gracefully. Her mind was running through the implications with the fast, systematic precision she used when a case broke open, but her body wanted to move to do something to close the distance between what she knew and the person who needed to know it. Her phone rang. Adrian. She answered before the first ring finished. Listen to me. I heard the message, he said. His voice was controlled. Very controlled. The specific kind of controlled that meant something had already landed and he was managing the impact. Say it again, slowly. She said it again. All of it. Hale. Forsyth. The redirect. The text message designed to pull him back reactive and off balance. The layered structure, Caruso as the visible threat, the destabilization strategy as the actual one. He listened without interrupting. She could hear in his silence the particular quality of a mind that was rapidly restructuring everything. It thought it knew about the last several weeks. When she finished, he said, Robert has been with me for 11 years. I know. He was at my father's funeral. I know. He's... A pause. A long one. The kind that contained something being suppressed. He has a daughter in college. I paid her tuition when he had a medical emergency 2 years ago. Adrian, Sophia said quietly. I know, he said, and his voice for just a moment cracked along a seam that she had not heard crack before. Not anger. Something older and more private. The sound of a man who had extended trust carefully, specifically, to a limited number of people discovering that the extension had been used against him. I know. She didn't say anything. She gave him the few seconds that required. Then he said in a voice that was fully controlled again, Where did you get this? Paul Reeves. Reeves is solid. Yes. He's certain about Forsyth. The meeting logs go back 8 months. The pattern is consistent. She paused. Adrian, I need you to tell me where you were going tonight, what Hale told you, what you were about to do. A pause. He told me Caruso was moving assets, that there was a window tonight to intercept something that would give us leverage. Another pause. He gave me a location. Sophia's stomach dropped. Did you go? I was 20 minutes out when your message came through. His voice was very even. The location would have put 3 of my people in a position that if the location was a setup, would have been very difficult to recover from. You stopped. I stopped. The silence between them held something enormous. Robert Hale gave you a location tonight that was designed to expose your people, Sophia said. Not a question. Making it concrete. Making it real in words so neither of them could soften it. Yes, Adrian said. Flat, specific, final. And he's done it through an 11-year relationship. Yes. Adrian. She kept her voice steady. Come back. A pause. I need 20 minutes to secure my people first. 20 minutes, she said. He hung up. Sophia sat down. She thought about Robert Hale at Adrian's father's funeral. She thought about a college tuition payment during a medical emergency. She thought about what it cost a man like Adrian, a man who had made a discipline of not trusting who had built the walls. Her grandmother would have recognized as the architecture of someone who had already lost too much to extend that specific personal trust. And she thought about what it felt like to have that trust methodically used as a key. She understood in that moment why the walls existed. And she thought, if the walls exist, because this is what trust costs, what does it mean that he is trying to tear them down anyway? What does it mean that he is choosing to try again? He came back in 18 minutes. He looked like a man who had been through a significant internal event and had decided that none of it was going to show on the outside, which meant it showed in small specific ways that Sophia now knew how to read the set of his jaw, the way he moved to the chair without looking around the room. First, the fact that he sat and did not speak immediately, but simply sat. She let him. After a moment, he said, "Tell me how you got there. Walk me through it." She walked him through it. All of it. The notebook. Her grandmother's first-page note. The behavioral review from the beginning. What she had filed away and not examined because Caruso had occupied the frame. The call to Paul Reeves. He listened, the way he always listened, completely, without performing attention, actually absorbing. When she finished, he said, "The anonymous caller who gave you the Caruso documents." "I don't know who she is," Sophia said. "But she is connected to Forsyth's operation somehow. She needed me to find Caruso so I would stop looking. She needed the Caruso narrative to be real enough to hold." And it was real enough, Adrian said, because Caruso's involvement with Isabella was genuine. Yes, which makes it elegant. She met his eyes. Caruso's people and Forsyth's people are not the same operation. But Forsyth knew about Caruso's attempt. He used it. He let Caruso run his own play, while Forsyth ran a different one in the shadow of it. Two separate threats using each other as cover, Adrian said. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. That's sophisticated. It required someone with very detailed knowledge of your schedule and your process, Sophia said carefully. Someone who knew the birthday timeline, who knew about the matchmaking search, who knew where the emotional pressure points were. Adrian looked at her steadily. Robert, he said. Robert told Forsyth, or Forsyth recruited Robert. I don't know which direction it ran, and Paul's documents don't establish that clearly. But the access Forsyth needed came through him. Adrian nodded slowly. Not processing, he had already processed. He was organizing. She could see it, the particular systematic quality of a mind that had shifted from absorbing a blow to deciding what happened next. What do you want to do? She said. He looked at her. That's my question. No, she said. I'm asking. Not because I don't have opinions. Because you are the one who has to live with the decision. And I think that distinction matters to you. Something shifted in his expression. It does. What do you want to do about Robert? She said. A long pause. I want to be angry, he said. I am angry, but anger is not a decision. He looked at his hands for a moment. Robert has a daughter. He has a life I have been part of for 11 years. Something happened. Financial pressure. Something. Forsyth offered something that made betrayal feel like the only option, or the best option, or a justified one. I don't know what that was. He looked up. I want to know before I decide. You want to talk to him, Sophia said. I want to understand, he said. Not forgive. I don't know yet if forgiveness is available. But understand, yes, because 11 years deserves at least that. Sophia looked at him. She thought, this is the man nobody outside this room gets to see. Not the feared businessman. Not the controlled, dangerous authority figure that the newspapers described and his enemies catalogued. This man in this chair who responded to betrayal by asking to understand first. I'll find out what I can about what Forsyth offered him, she said. Before you talk to him, so you go in knowing. Yes, he said. And Caruso. Caruso is still a problem. Separate but real. The Isabella connection still needs to be addressed. I'll handle Caruso, he said. And the way he said it left no ambiguity about the nature of that handling, not violent, but decisive and permanent. His access to anything connected to this family ends. Isabella should know that too, Sophia said. She deserves to know that the channel has been closed. You'll tell her. Yes. He nodded. Then he said, and the birthday. 23 days, Sophia said quietly. Yes. He looked at her. She looked at him. 23 days. A party his mother had been planning for months. A family expecting an announcement. A process that had begun with a folder of 3 names and had become something neither of them had planned for. We don't have to resolve everything tonight, she said. No, he agreed. But I want to say one thing. Adrian. One thing, he said. And then we go back to the work. She waited. Thank you, he said. Not for the professional work, not for the intelligence tonight, as essential as that was. He looked at her directly. Thank you for being the fixed point, for staying in this office and doing the thing you do, the thinking, the notebooks, the going back to the beginning, while I was out there reacting to what I was shown. A pause. You are the reason 3 of my people are not in a very dangerous place right now. Sophia's throat tightened. I was doing my job, she said. Sophia. His voice was gentle but firm. Stop saying that. She stopped. It wasn't only your job, he said. And you know it. She did know it. She had known it for a long time. 23 days, she said again. Quieter this time. Yes. A lot can happen in 23 days. A lot has already happened in 38, he said. She almost smiled. That's true. He stood up, picked up his coat. At the door he turned back the same position, the same turn that had become a kind of punctuation between them over 3 weeks. A specific grammar of departure. Get some sleep, he said. You too. I'll have Diane's contact verify the Forsyth documents independently before morning. A pause. And Sophia. Yes. Lock the door this time. All the way. She looked at him. Was that concern or a security instruction? Both, he said. In equal measure. He left. She locked the door. All the way. She slept 4 hours. Woke at 5. Made coffee and sat with Paul's documents again, and her notebook open to the page with Robert Hale's name on it. And by 6:30, she had the shape of what had happened to him. Forsyth had approached Robert 14 months ago. Not with money, not initially. With information, specifically information about a decision the Moretti organization had made 8 years earlier that had cost Robert something personal. Something he had never spoken about, never raised, never brought to Adrian. Something he had absorbed and continued working through because he was loyal and because loyalty was what he knew. Forsyth had found the wound and pressed on it. Sophia read the account in Paul's documents and felt something that was not quite sympathy and not quite absolution, but was somewhere in the complicated territory between them. She thought about wounds that went unspoken, about loyalty that went unacknowledged, about how a careful patient person could find the specific unhealed place in someone's history and use it as a lever. It was what Forsyth did. It was what Caruso did. It was what every threat in this story had done, found the real thing and weaponized it. She thought about Adrian saying, I spent my entire life believing protection meant control. She thought about the walls. She thought about all the ways a person could be used through the things they genuinely felt. At 7:15 her phone rang. Lucia Moretti. Sophia answered immediately. Lucia. There is a problem, Lucia said. Her voice was steady, the steadiness of someone who had spent decades managing crises and had not stopped knowing how. But underneath it was something tight and alarmed. Last night, someone was in the garden of the house. Security found evidence of it this morning. Nothing taken, nobody hurt, but someone was there. Sophia stood up. Adrian knows, she said. I called him first. He knows. He is... A pause. He is handling it in the way he handles things, which means he is controlled and thorough, and not telling me the parts that would frighten me. I know those parts, Sophia said carefully. I know you do, Lucia said, which is why I am calling you. A pause. Sophia, tell me honestly, is my family safe? Sophia looked at Paul's documents, at her notebook, at the name Forsyth and the name Hale and the layered structure she had spent the night mapping. Yes, she said, not carelessly, not as reassurance for its own sake. Because now we know what we're actually dealing with, and knowing is the most important step. You sound like his grandmother, Lucia said, for the second time. She sounds like she would have been excellent at this job, Sophia said. Lucia made a sound that was very close to a laugh despite everything. She would have liked you enormously. A pause. Come to dinner tonight, here, not as a professional, as someone I want at my table. Sophia hesitated. Lucia, Sophia, gentle, absolute. Come to dinner. She told herself it was practical. That being inside the Moretti house would give her direct access to the security assessment of the garden incident. That proximity to the family during an active threat was professionally justifiable. She told herself that for approximately 4 minutes. Then she stopped and admitted that she wanted to go. That she had wanted for several weeks to exist in Adrian's life, in a context that was not her office desk and the professional frame she kept constructing between them. That Lucia's invitation felt like a door being held open by someone who understood exactly what she was offering. She arrived at 7. The house was large but not cold. It had the specific warmth of a place that had been genuinely lived in, where the furniture showed evidence of real use and the kitchen smelled like something that had been cooking since afternoon. Lucia met her at the door personally, which was not what Sophia had expected, and took both her hands and held them for a moment, the way a woman did when she meant something by it. Thank you for coming, Lucia said. Thank you for the invitation, Sophia said. Adrian is in the study. He'll be out in a moment. Come and sit with me. They sat in a room that Sophia understood within 60 seconds was the real center of the house, not the formal rooms. This one with its photographs and the particular accumulation of a family's decades laid out on surfaces without arrangement, just placed, just present. Lucia talked about her husband, about the early years, about raising Adrian alone after he was gone, about the specific challenge of raising a son who had inherited his father's capacity for protection and needed to be taught slowly that protection was not the same as walls. I did not always teach it well, Lucia said. There were years I let him build the walls because it was easier, because it meant he was safe, and I was tired and grieving, and safety seemed like enough. You raised a good man, Sophia said. I raised a good man who does not know how to be loved without managing it, Lucia said, which is the particular failure that haunts me. She looked at Sophia. Until recently. Sophia felt the warmth move up through her chest. He's changing, she said quietly. Yes, Lucia said. Because of you. The door opened. Adrian stood there. He looked at his mother first, then at Sophia. And his expression, seeing both of them in the same room, was the most unguarded thing she had ever seen on his face. Something open and caught and quietly devastated in the way that pure, unexpected happiness could be devastating to a person who had not felt it in a very long time. You came, he said. Your mother is very persuasive, Sophia said. She is the most persuasive person I know, he agreed, and he said it with a warmth in his voice that made Lucia reach over and pat Sophia's hand once briefly, as if to say, Do you see? Do you see what you have done for him? Sophia saw. She saw all of it. They had dinner, the three of them, with the housekeeper and one of Adrian's security team eating in the kitchen nearby, and the garden incident sitting in the background of everything, and Forsyth and Hale, and 23 days all present in the room even when nobody named them directly. And somewhere in the middle of it, between Lucia telling a story about Adrian at 14 that made him cover his face with his hand, and Sophia laugh harder than she had laughed in months. The professional frame she had been so carefully maintaining did something she had not authorized. It simply wasn't there anymore. Not broken, Not removed, just gone. Dissolved by the specific ordinariness of a dinner table, and a woman who reached across to refill her glass without asking, and a man who watched Sophia from across the table with an expression she no longer pretended not to recognize. After dinner, Lucia excused herself with the particular grace of a woman who had arranged the entire evening for a specific purpose and was now allowing it to accomplish that purpose without her supervision. Adrian and Sophia sat at the table alone. "Robert talked to me today," he said. Sophia straightened. "And?" "Forsyth told him about a business decision my father made in 2016. One that cost Robert's brother a partnership he had worked for 10 years. His voice was steady. "He never told me. He carried it for a decade." "Would it have changed anything?" Sophia asked. "If he had told you?" "Yes," Adrian said. "Not the original decision that was my father's, and I can't undo it. But I would have done something. I would have made it right in some form." A pause. "He didn't believe that. He didn't trust that." "He didn't trust," Adrian said simply. "And that is the part I keep returning to. Not the betrayal. The fact that a man who worked beside me for 11 years did not believe I would respond to his honesty with anything other than punishment." Sophia looked at him. "What does that tell you?" she said. He met her eyes. "That I made protection feel like control, even to the people inside it." A pause. "That the walls I built to keep threats out also kept people from believing they could speak freely." The silence was very quiet. "That's hard to hear," Sophia said. "Yes," he said. "It's also necessary." He looked at her. "You told me that the first night, that I'd built something so high nobody could reach me." "I said you'd built a wall," she said. "You were right." He paused. "I'm working on it." She looked at him across the table, the dinner table in his mother's house, in the life he had been living behind the walls, the life that had been emptier than it needed to be for longer than it should have been. "I know you are," she said. He reached across the table. Not dramatically, not with declaration or pressure. He simply placed his hand on the table between them, open still present, and looked at her and waited. Sophia looked at his hand. She thought about her 3 professional certainties from that morning. 3 weeks ago. She thought about the notebook. Her grandmother's handwriting. The loudest threat is rarely the only one. She thought, and the loudest reason to stay safe is rarely the only thing worth considering. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, steady, specific. Not possessive. Not triumphant. Just present. 23 days, she said softly. "We'll handle it," he said. "Together," she said. And it was not a question. Together, he agreed. Outside the city moved. 23 days to Lucia's birthday. Forsyth still in play. Robert Hale's future still undecided. Caruso still needing to be addressed. The whole complicated, layered, real architecture of what came next still waiting. But in that room and that table, 2 people sat with their hands joined across the surface where a family had been built and lost and rebuilt, and was now slowly and with great intention becoming something larger. Sophia thought about the folder that had arrived on her desk 38 days ago. 3 names. 3 possible brides. She thought about how certain she had been that first evening that she was simply the professional in the room. She thought about how wrong the loudest certainties could be. And she held on. The 23 days did not pass quietly. Sophia had not expected them to. She had learned in the 5 weeks since Adrian Moretti had walked into her office and placed a folder on her desk that quiet was not a state this story was capable of sustaining for long. Every time something settled, something else shifted. Every time she thought she understood the shape of what they were dealing with, the shape changed. But she had also learned something else in those 5 weeks. She had learned that she could handle the shifting, not because she was unafraid. She was afraid specifically and realistically in the way that a person was afraid when the stakes were real, and the people involved were people she had come to care about in ways that exceeded any professional category she had previously understood. She was afraid for Adrian, for Lucia, for the family that was trying against real pressure to hold itself together long enough to celebrate a birthday, But fear and capability were not mutually exclusive. Her grandmother had told her that. Her 10 years of sitting across from people in the worst moments of their emotional lives had confirmed it. So Sophia was afraid, and she worked anyway. She and Diane spent the first week building the complete picture of Forsyth's operation, not just the connection to Robert Hale, but the full scope of what Forsyth had been constructing over 14 months. The shipping route repositioning. The quiet financial pressure on 3 of the Moretti organization's smaller partners. The way the destabilization strategy had been designed to look from the inside like organic business difficulty rather than coordinated attack. It was sophisticated. It was patient. And it was in several important ways almost elegant, which made it more threatening, not less, because elegant plans had fewer visible failure points. Adrian handled Robert. He told Sophia about it the morning after in her office, with the specific quietness of someone reporting on something that had cost him and was choosing not to dramatize the cost. He cried, Adrian said. When I told him I knew about his brother, he cried, and then he asked me why I hadn't come to him about any of it afterward, why I hadn't noticed what the decision had cost someone in my own organization. A pause. I didn't have a good answer. What did you say? Sophia asked. I said I should have noticed. That it was a failure of attention and of care, and that regardless of what came after that part, was mine to own. He was quiet for a moment. He told me that Forsyth had spent 6 months convincing him that what he was doing wasn't betrayal, that it was correction, that he was balancing a debt. And now, Sophia said, now he knows what it actually was. Adrian looked at his hands. He's going to cooperate with everything. Full disclosure. Every contact with Forsyth. Every piece of information he passed every meeting. A pause. He asked if I would make sure his daughter was taken care of, regardless of what happened to him. Sophia's chest tightened. What did you say? I said yes, Adrian said simply. Because she had nothing to do with this. And because I told him I would 11 years ago, when I paid her tuition. And I am not in the habit of going back on what I've said. Sophia looked at him. You extended grace to a man who betrayed you, she said. I extended accountability with consequences, he said. And I tried to understand why a good man made a terrible choice. A pause. That's not grace. That's just trying to be fair. Most people don't try that hard to be fair to someone who hurt them. He met her eyes. I've been learning from someone who does. The quiet between them was warm. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at it. His jaw tightened. Forsyth has requested a meeting. Sophia straightened. Through what channel? His attorney. Formal request. He wants to discuss, and I'm reading this directly. Mutual interests in a resolution that preserves the stability of all parties involved. Adrian set the phone down. Which means he knows his operation has been identified and he is attempting to negotiate before it becomes something worse for him. He doesn't know about Robert's cooperation yet, Sophia said. No, he thinks he still has the inside advantage. Adrian looked at her. What do you think? I think you take the meeting, Sophia said immediately. And I think you go in knowing everything he doesn't know you know. Something that was almost a smile crossed his face. I was thinking the same thing. I know you were, she said. I want to be there. He looked at her. That's not what, she said. Standard, no. But nothing about this has been standard from the beginning, and I have more complete information about the shape of this situation than anyone except Diane, who cannot be in that room. I should be there. A pause. If you're in the room, he said carefully, you are no longer the matchmaker who stumbled into a complicated situation. You are a visible participant. Forsyth will note you. He will research you. He will file you as a target for the next time he needs leverage. I know, Sophia said. And you're still saying yes. I'm still saying yes. He looked at her for a long moment. All right, he said. And the way he said it, not reluctant, not conceding, but acknowledging a decision she had made as her own, and respecting it as such, was everything she had not known to ask for, and everything she had needed. The meeting with Forsyth happened 4 days before Lucia's birthday. How was a composed man of about 60, with the particular surface ease of someone who had made his living in negotiation and had learned that stillness was a form of power. He arrived with his attorney and sat across from Adrian at a table in a conference room that was deliberately neutral. Not Moretti territory, not Forsyth's, just a room, and opened with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Mr. Moretti," he said, "I appreciate the willingness to meet." "I'm a reasonable man," Adrian said, "when reasonable behavior is warranted." Forsyth's eyes moved to Sophia, a flicker of assessment, then back to Adrian. "And your guest?" "My advisor," Adrian said. "She stays or the meeting ends." A beat. "Of course." Sophia sat still and watched Forsyth, the way she watched everyone, with the quiet, total attention that her grandmother had called the most useful tool a person could develop if they were patient enough to practice it. Forsyth opened by offering a retreat. He framed it as a mutual de-escalation. He spoke about the shipping routes as a business matter, not a personal one. He referenced the disruption of recent weeks with the kind of careful vagueness that technically admitted nothing. He was very good. Adrian let him finish. Then he said, "I appreciate the framing, Mr. Forsyth. It's elegant. But I think we can save time by being more direct." He placed a folder on the table. "My organization has a complete account of your 14-month operation, your contact with Robert Hale, the financial structures you used, the timeline of your approach to 3 of my business partners, the strategy around the birthday search." He paused. "All of it." Forsyth's composure shifted, only slightly, but Sophia saw it. "Additionally," Adrian continued, "Robert Hale is cooperating fully, so the inside advantage you came into this room believing you held no longer exists." The attorney leaned to Forsyth and said something quietly. Forsyth held up one hand, and the attorney stopped. He looked at Adrian. Really looked for the first time since entering the room, not the performing kind of attention he had been deploying, but the real kind, the kind that meant he was revising. Then he looked at Sophia. "You," he said, not angrily, with a kind of professional recognition. "The matchmaker." "The advisor," Sophia said. "You found the Hale connection," he said. She did not confirm or deny. She simply looked at him with the quiet, patient attention she had been using since she sat down. He almost smiled. "You're not what I expected." "Very few useful things are," she said. Adrian opened his mouth. She put her hand briefly on the table between them, a small, specific gesture, and he stopped and let her continue. "Mr. Forsyth," she said, "you built a sophisticated operation. It required patience and real intelligence, and a detailed understanding of how to find pressure points in a complicated system." She paused. "It also required you to use a good man's grief as a lever, and to position yourself inside the most personal event of a family's year, and to put 3 innocent women inside a manufactured situation without their knowledge or consent." She met his eyes. "You are going to resolve this. The only question is whether you resolve it in a way that allows you to rebuild something from what's left, or in a way that removes the possibility of anything left to rebuild." Forsyth studied her. "You're not a lawyer," he said. "No," she said. "I'm someone who reads people, and what I read in you right now is that you came into this room with a negotiating position you no longer have, and you are deciding whether to acknowledge that clearly or spend the next 40 minutes pretending otherwise." A pause. One of those options wastes everyone's time. The other gives you a chance to end this with something intact. The silence was long. Forsyth looked at his attorney, then back at Adrian, then at Sophia again, and then with the particular exhale of a man who had made a calculation and accepted the result. He said, "What do you want?" They were out of the building in 90 minutes. On the street, Adrian stopped walking and turned to her and said simply, "That was remarkable." "It was honest," Sophia said. "People underestimate honesty in those rooms." "He underestimated you completely." "Most people do," she said. "It's professionally useful." He looked at her for a moment. "Sophia." "Yes. I need to tell you something, and I need you to not deflect it professionally." She looked at him. The city moved around them. 4 days before Lucia's birthday. Everything unraveling into something manageable. The sun doing what October sun did in New York, present, but cool, like a courtesy. "All right," she said. "I am in love with you," he said. Clean, direct, without architecture or strategy. Just the sentence standing on its own. "I have been for weeks. I kept stopping myself from saying it because you kept stopping me and I respected the stops. But we are 4 days from the end of the formal structure of this, and I am not going to walk into my mother's birthday still pretending I don't know what I know." Sophia's heart was making very unauthorized decisions. "Adrian." "No deflection," he said. "You said you wouldn't." She closed her eyes briefly, opened them. "I know," she said. "I'm not deflecting. I'm—" She stopped, took a breath. Let go of the 3 professional certainties she had woken up with 5 weeks ago because they had been dissolving for days, and it was time to stop pretending they were still standing. "I know what I feel," she said. "I've known for a long time. I was afraid of it." I know you were. I'm still a little afraid of it. I know that too." "Your world is complicated," she said. "And I am someone who runs a small matchmaking agency on West 43rd Street. Those 2 things don't fit together neatly." "Nothing real fits neatly," he said. "I have been trying to make things fit neatly my entire life. You are the person who showed me that neatness and rightness are not the same thing." She looked at him. "I love you," she said, quietly. For the first time in her own words, without the professional frame around it. "I love who you are when nobody is performing. The man who fixed my heater and remembered my coffee order and told Robert Hale that his daughter would be taken care of. That man." She paused. "I love that man." He reached up and touched her face. His hand was warm and specific and entirely steady. "Good," he said. And the single word said with that particular quiet certainty was the most complete thing she had ever heard. Lucia Moretti's 70th birthday arrived on a Saturday. The house was full in the way a house was full when a family had decided against the pressure of complicated weeks and layered threats and all the things that tried to take celebrations apart before they happened that tonight was happening, and it was happening well. Lucia wore a deep red dress. She stood in the center of her home and received her family and her friends with the warmth of a woman who had earned every room she stood in. And when she saw Sophia arrive with Adrian, she did not make a scene of it. She simply took Sophia's hand and held it and said quietly in the moment before the rest of the room claimed them, "You came back." "I'm not going anywhere," Sophia said. Lucia's eyes were bright. "Good," she said, and let her go. The evening moved the way. Good evenings moved not perfectly, not without the small complications of any gathering of real people, but with the particular warmth of a family that was choosing deliberately and with full awareness of the effort required to be present with each other. Victoria Hayes arrived because Adrian had invited her not as a candidate, not as a former possibility, but as a person he had come to genuinely respect and wanted at his table. She found Sophia within 10 minutes and said without preamble, "You look different." "Different how?" Sophia said. "Like someone who stopped doing calculus." Victoria's smile was dry and real. "It suits you." Clara Evans arrived late, still in the clean, unstudied clothes that were entirely her own, and immediately found her way to Lucia, who had been briefly updated on the medical question Lucia had been avoiding raising with her own physicians. Within 20 minutes, they were deep in a conversation that had nothing to do with the birthday, and everything to do with Lucia finally having a doctor in the room she trusted enough to speak honestly to. Sophia watched this and thought, these are not defeated women. These are people who came into a complicated situation with integrity and are leaving it with the same. She thought about the folder. 3 names. 3 possible brides. She thought about how completely, how quietly, how inevitably the story had become something none of them had come in expecting. Isabella Romano sent flowers and a handwritten note to Lucia. She did not attend, which was its own form of grace. The grace of a woman who understood when her presence would complicate rather than add and chose accordingly. The note said, among other things, that she hoped Lucia's birthday was everything she had waited for. Sophia thought, there are no villains in this story. Just people who were used and people who used them, and the long, complicated aftermath of choosing trust in a world that kept demonstrating why trust was difficult. She was standing near the edge of the room, holding a glass. She had not been drinking, thinking about all of this, when Adrian appeared at her shoulder. "You're in your head," he said. "Occupational hazard," she said. "What are you thinking about?" "Three names," she said. "A folder on my desk. The night a man walked into my office and changed the entire direction of something I thought I understood completely." He was quiet for a moment. "Which thing did you think you understood?" "My own life," she said. "The shape of it. The professional frame. The careful distance." She looked at him. "I had it very organized." "You did," he agreed. "You disrupted it entirely." "I know," he said, and he sounded specifically not sorry about that. She almost smiled. "I'm not complaining." "Good." He paused. "My mother wants to say something to the family tonight, before the dinner. She told me this afternoon." Sophia turned to look at him. "What kind of something?" "The kind that involves me standing beside her," he said. "And the kind where she'd like you to be standing beside me." Sophia was very still. "Adrian, I am not proposing at my mother's birthday party," he said, and the dry specific clarity of it made her exhale a laugh of pure relief. "I want to be clear about that. When I propose, and I will, it will be nowhere near anyone else's celebration. It will be quiet and private, and you will have my complete undivided attention." He paused. "Tonight she simply wants her family to see that the chair she was afraid would be empty forever is not empty, that is all." Sophia looked at him. The empty chair. Lucia had said those words to her. The chair she feared for years was finally filled. "The chair," Sophia said quietly. "Yes," he said. "She told me years ago that her greatest fear about growing old was not her own death. It was watching me live in that particular absence, the absence of someone beside me, and not being able to fix it." He met her eyes. "She is not afraid of that anymore." Sophia felt something move through her chest that was too large and too warm for any professional category she had ever applied to anything. "She's a remarkable woman," Sophia said. "She likes you more than she's liked anyone in years," he said. "Which, for the record, she told me before she told me to tell you. She wanted you to know it came from her directly." "It did," Sophia said. "She called me 3 times." "I know." He paused. "Is 3 times a lot?" "For Lucia. I think 3 times means she loves you more than she can say, and is working around it by calling the person next to you." He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved across his face that was very quiet, and very open, and very clearly not something he had many people to show it to. "Come stand beside me," he said. She went. Lucia stood in the center of her family, and said the things a woman said when she had reached 70 years and was still standing, and still loved, and still grateful. She spoke about the husband she had lost too young, and the son she had raised in the gap that left. She spoke about what family meant, not the performing version, not the public version, but the real version that showed up on ordinary Tuesdays, and answered the phone at midnight, and fixed the heater when the cold got through. She looked at Adrian when she said that. He looked at Sophia. And Lucia said, "The chair I have feared for years is not empty tonight, and the woman standing in it is not standing there because she was chosen from a list. She is standing there because she saw my son when he did not know he was visible." And she stayed. The room was quiet, not the uncomfortable kind. The kind that happened when something true was said in a room full of people who recognized truth and knew enough to give it silence. Sophia's eyes were burning. She was not going to cry. She was absolutely not going to cry in the middle of Lucia Moretti's birthday, in front of the entire Moretti family. She blinked. Carefully. Adrian's hand found hers. Under the level of the table, quiet specific. Not for the room. For her. She held on. Later, after the dinner, after the cake, after Lucia had danced with her nephew, and Victoria had made Clara laugh with something devastatingly accurate about hospital administrators, after the family had filled the room with the specific noise of people who were genuinely glad to be together, Sophia and Adrian stood in the quiet of the kitchen, which was the only room with any space left in it. "She's happy," Sophia said. "Yes," he said. "She's been happy for 3 weeks, since the heater." He looked at her. She told me you deserved someone who fixed things instead of breaking them. I told her she raised a good man. We were both right, he said. Sophia turned to face him fully. What happens next? She said. Practically. Professionally. All of it. What does it look like? Practically, he said, Forsyth's operation is being unwound. The business partners he pressured have been contacted, and the situation explained. Caruso's channel into the family social circle has been closed. Isabella's introduction has been formally withdrawn from the process in a way that protects her reputation entirely. Robert is cooperating and will face consequences that account for both what he did and why. He paused. The shipping routes are secure. The family is not at risk. And professionally, she said. You are no longer my matchmaker, he said. You haven't been in any real sense for about 3 weeks. The professional engagement ended when it became something else. And personally, she said. He looked at her. Personally, he said. I want to have dinner with you on a night when nobody is in crisis, and there is no intelligence briefing, and the only thing on the table between us is food. A pause. And I want to take you somewhere that has nothing to do with Manhattan, somewhere without the city in it, so you can remember what quiet sounds like. I like quiet, she said. I know you do. You have the loudest quiet office I have ever sat in. She laughed a real laugh, the kind that happened when something caught her genuinely. He watched her laugh with an expression that made her want to look away and not look away simultaneously. And after dinner, she said. After dinner, he said, we figure out the rest of it, together, without a folder, without a deadline. He paused. Without a professional frame. That's going to require some adjustment, she said. I'm patient, he said. You are, she agreed. Infuriatingly patient. You've said that before. It keeps being true. He reached up and tucked a piece of hair behind her ear, a quiet, specific gesture that asked nothing and assumed nothing, and was somehow, in its smallness, more intimate than anything dramatic could have been. Sophia, he said. Yes. Thank you for not running. She looked at him. At the man behind the reputation. The man who had sat in her office at 8 in the morning with the right coffee and a bakery bag, and the particular patient attention of someone who had decided she was worth seeing clearly. The man who had fixed her heater on a Wednesday evening and driven back lighter than he'd left. The man who had said when instead of if, and meant it, and waited, and not pushed, and shown up. Thank you for making it worth staying, she said. In the years that followed, people in certain circles still told the story of the night Adrian Moretti attended his mother's birthday with a woman who was not one of the 3 candidates. The remarkable women he had met through an unusual process and stood beside her in front of his entire family, as though she had always been there. They told it as a mystery, as a curiosity. Some told it as a love story which was closer. Very few of them knew the real version. Very few of them knew about the notebooks and the anonymous caller and the 11-year betrayal and the patient-layered strategy of a man named Forsyth that had tried and failed to use love as a destabilizing force. Very few of them knew about the 3 women who had walked into a complicated situation with integrity and left with it intact. Very few of them knew about a heater fixed on a Wednesday evening, or a coffee order remembered without being given, or the specific quality of silence in a small office on West 43rd Street, where the most feared man in New York had come conversation by conversation to understand that the walls he had built to keep the world out had also been keeping him from his own life. They married quietly the following spring. No announcement, no newspaper coverage, no formal ceremony designed for anyone other than the people in the room. Lucia sat in the front in a chair that had been empty for too many years, and she cried the happy tears she had been saving since the first night she heard Adrian come home, different lighter present finally standing at the center of his own life instead of managing its edges. Victoria attended. Clara attended. Isabella sent flowers and a note so warm and so generous that Sophia read it twice and kept it, at the moment that mattered most when everything was quiet and everyone who was supposed to be there was there. Adrian looked at Sophia the way he had looked at her that first night across a professional desk with that careful, deliberate precision, but different now. No longer assessing threat or gift, simply seeing her, clearly completely without the distance that management required. And Sophia looked back at the man who had walked into her office, believing he needed a matchmaker, and discovered instead that he needed exactly what he had never allowed himself to have. Someone who saw the truth of him and was not afraid of it. Someone who stayed. She had brought 3 brides for the most feared man in New York. And he had looked past all of them, not because they were not extraordinary, but because extraordinary was already sitting across the desk. He had been right. She had been the one. She had simply needed 23 days, 3 women with more grace than the situation deserved. A mother who fixed problems by inviting them to dinner, and one quiet Wednesday evening with a broken heater to understand that the most important match she had ever made in 10 years of this work was the one she had never seen coming. Because real love did not arrive in folders. It did not follow the structure of a process or the logic of a professional arrangement. It arrived in the wrong office at the wrong time, carrying the right coffee, and it waited patient, certain, unhurried, until the person it came for was finally completely ready to stop running the calculus and simply let it be real. That was the story people got wrong when they told it. They thought Adrian Moretti had chosen the matchmaker over the brides. What actually happened was simpler and more true and more lasting than any version the rumors produced. He had walked into a room looking for someone to complete an arrangement, and he had found instead the one person in his world who completed him. That was not a choice. That was the only possible ending, and it was exactly enough.